Okay. Good morning and afternoon and possibly evening to our listeners. Um, Today we are going to be talking about balancing our systems. And just as the introduction, this is the my apprenticeship and Joanna's mentorship with for the cyclical wisdom of living and the living vibrantly that Joanna shares with the world and that I'm trying to learn and do my best to incorporate in my own life that really helped me heal when I was really sick last year. And I'm learning everything I can to be able to spread it to other people who really can use this knowledge, even when it comes to just take some time to chew your food better. Sometimes it's really just these real basic things. And so,
Breathe.
yeah, and just breathe. So, I'm really excited to hear what you have in store for us about balancing our systems. So, welcome, Joanna, and thank you.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome. And thank you, Jasaya. It's always an honor to be here. Excuse me. And today I wanted to talk about balance. This is something, okay, I'm going to be having troubles with my voice today. Sorry about that. But balance is something that is really vital and plays a huge, huge role in our vitality and how we experience life. And in this day and age, especially, let's just say in North America, since you're in the States and I'm in Canada, and this is kind of, like our main group of people that we get to associate with and hang out with. And so, anyways, where I'm going with all of this is that in our modern society, especially in more of these, built up countries like North America and so on, we see a lot of extremes. And it's not just in diet, but it's extreme in so many areas of life. And these things often, these extremes can become detrimental over a long period of time. And this is kind of what I wanted to highlight. There may be moments in our life where an extreme approach to something is absolutely crucial and beneficial and timely in the moment. But what we need to be aware of is when something stops supporting us and when it starts causing issues for us. And so that's something that I see a lot of, especially in the world of diet and what do I eat. There's so many extreme diet choices and whatnot out there today. And there's so many different categories and whatever. I'm not even going to start naming any of these. I can't even keep up, to be honest with you. And where I'm coming from on all of this is I want to encourage everybody to take a more balanced approach, as well as really checking in with yourself before jumping on the bandwagon of what the next fad thing is that's going on out there. And we've seen this over and over again in all the years. I mean, I've been practicing for over 23 years now, and we see all these extreme fads coming and going and coming and going. And it's like, oh, this diet, this is it, do this, eat this way. And there's usually a whole bunch of restrictions and rules and all kinds of things. And people get all, wrapped up in it. And then when they can't successfully maintain that, then they feel like a failure, or they feel like they're not really serving themselves right at their highest level. And then the guilt comes in, and then the shame, and then all these other layers of things. And it just really doesn't belong in this scenario. And the bottom line is we are miraculous in ourselves as human beings. I mean, the miracle is just like so beyond words, really. And we don't even understand our full capacity as human beings. Like, we've probably maybe like scratched the surface of like this much ultimately. And so our bodies will do everything possible to keep us alive and to keep us going, because that's what they're meant to do. And so even when we are maybe not taking a balanced approach to our lives, whether it's food related, lifestyle, in whatever area of life that it is, our bodies are going to try and work with us to maintain vitality. But we need to remember that they need a very crucial subset of specific nutrients in order to be able to do their job and to provide all these functions. And there's like this huge plethora of activity and action that needs to be happening in our bodies all the time. Digestion should only be like this tiny little piece of it. And yet, what I see so often in practice and in clinic is that there's so much stress on the body, well, in general, and especially within the realm of food and eating. There's just so much confusion out there and whatnot. So I just wanted to really hop on here today and really encourage you to sit down with yourself and really just look at, your practices and your habits and the things that you do around food and the way that you approach food. Eating shouldn't be stressful. It should be one of the most joyous activities, in our lives. And it's a combined, this massive sensory thing that's happening at the same time, and all of our senses get involved, our sight, our smell, and sometimes even our sound as we're hearing food being prepared and different things, the taste buds, all of it all comes into play. And that's why I always teach, taking the time to sit down, prepare a meal. Even if you've pre-prepped all of the food, take that moment when you're putting it all together and just really be mindful and be present. And when we approach our eating habits from a place of balance, then that's a very different approach than what we're seeing happening with a lot of these, extreme diets that are being pushed and whatnot. And so prefacing that by saying that, yes, there may be moments in your life when an extreme action is beneficial and can be helpful. But the key part of that is in a moment. A lot of these extreme things are meant to support us to kind of help redirect information, so to speak, and reset activities and actions that are happening within our bodies. And so I just totally lost my thought where I was going with that. Sorry about that.
That's okay. You were talking about how sometimes there are moments where an extreme action,
yeah, got it. Thank you. So yes, there's moments in these extremes that can be beneficial. But what we want to be able to recognize and understand and acknowledge is that they have a place and time and a time limit, right? So something that could serve you in the moment, in the long run, if it's continued, could end up not serving you and actually be detrimental. And so this is where your own intuition and really being tapped into what's happening with yourself is really key as well too. So being able to acknowledge and to understand and to feel into when something is finished supporting you and it's time to move on to a place of coming back into balance or move into a different approach. And so this is why I teach what I teach around food as well too, because balance and local variety, in season, quality of food. These are the things that I'm always stressing. And the way that I teach how we actually put our food together and when we eat it plays a huge role in all of this as well too, because ultimately the bottom line is based on the principles of how I teach you to be aware of food and how to approach food actually supports that balance and supports you to actually, without having to cause serious brain damage thinking and researching and checking this and doing this and doing this every time you go to eat something. Just know and trust that everything you're eating within that meal is going to serve you at its highest level and is going to continue to do that, and is in support of everything else that you're doing as well too. And so that's really the key, is being able to, and again, we are all biochemically unique individuals. And so this is where I get really frustrated with all of these, extreme diets and things that are being touted as, oh, this is the way to do it. And this is the way to cure this. And this is the way to do this, and blah, 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 blah. And it's like, again, those things may have certain value in the moment, but they're not meant to be long term. And they are not meant to be used in a lot of the ways that we are seeing in the world today as well too. And so actually just having the knowledge and the understanding of how to put your nutrients together with whatever you have in the moment is really key and is really crucial to supporting you to have that peace of mind and that trust in your own choices, and know that you are supporting yourself, at this really, really high level. And once your body begins to understand that you're working with it on this level, then it responds in a way that supports you as well too. And it's just like, oh my goodness, thank you, thank you, thank you. I really needed that nutrient to come in right now, and you just provided it for me, and you made it easy for me to be able to use it. You made it readily available. And this is the perfect time of day. So, oh my gosh, thank you. And that is the key to living a vibrant life, and a life that goes far beyond the ordinary. And that's a difference between just surviving as opposed to thriving. And unfortunately, what I see as a whole is people surviving and not thriving. And, it's just really sad. And like I said, there is so much confusing misinformation out there. And this is where, like, really, again, tapping into yourself and your own intuition as well too, instead of just being like, oh, jumping on the, the next fad bandwagon. Oh yeah, that sounds great. I'm going to do that. But I encourage you to, yeah, we can look at things, but check them out. Do your homework, do some research. What was this particular diet, for lack of a better term, originally created for? What was its therapeutic value? Look into all of that before you jump on the bandwagon and say, oh yeah, that's what I'm going to do. Because I've seen so many women come through my practice over the years who have jumped on these different bandwagons of, oh, I thought I was eating healthy because I was doing XYZ. And, as women, where it often shows up is our hormone balance. And so that's how I'm tying all of this back into, our hormone balance, as well as just being balanced as a whole, as a human being, and being able to, live a very vital life in our daily lives. Like I said, our bodies are just so miraculous. And when we give them the tools that they need to do what they're supposed to do, when they're supposed to do it, then that quality of life and that level of how we experience life really starts to shift. And it really supports being able to handle the stresses that we have coming at us in our daily lives all the time, especially, in this time period, in this era that we're living in. There's just so much stress, and a lot of it we can't necessarily do away with. And not all stress is, comes into the category of bad either. We tend to classify stress as good and bad, but stress is stress. Even something that brings us great joy and that we're very excited about, there's a certain amount of stress, in, let's just say, the execution or leading up to, whatever that could be. And that's stress as well too. And so for our bodies to be able to respond in a way that supports us all the time, we need to have that foundation in place, and we need to have reserves in place as well too. And this is what I see a lot of is, women coming to me with like no reserves. They got nothing left. They're constantly running on an empty gas tank, and the body's got nothing to pull from. There's no, savings in the bank account, so to speak. There's no gas in the gas tank. And it's like, what am I supposed to do? And like I said, our bodies will find a way, but in so doing, it's not always to our advantage. To support us to live like a vibrant, thriving life. And so that was just my little kind of like 2 cents bit that I wanted to put out into the world today about balance. It's just something that's been coming up a lot lately, and just seeing, so many extremes in the media about different things. So just a reminder that balance is really a key to living a vibrant life, or any type of life that supports us to experience life in a way that is more positive and that supports us. And then remembering, too, that life is happening, for us instead of to us. And so our experiences and our adventures through this experience of life, including all our food journeys, is, all part of this as well too. And it's an opportunity to learn, an opportunity to grow, and an opportunity to step into a new level of supporting ourselves so that we can be these really, vibrant beings and shine our light out into the world and into whatever it is that we're doing, and be able to come from that place of love, first and foremost for ourselves, so that we can in turn express that back out into the world and in all of our relationships, business, family, whatever it is, as well too, and just as a society as a whole. And so, yeah, that's my 2 cents for today.
Well, thank you so much. It's a great reminder, and something that we can continually dive into, within the pillars that you use with the I Live Vibrantly, and people who aren't yet familiar with that, just to pay attention to like what is in balance, what's out of balance, like you mentioned, just take a seat with yourself and just kind of pay attention to what your activities are, because the paying attention and listening is often the first step. And I
Exactly.
was curious if we could just, for the last few minutes, just touch on, when you're talking about the thriving versus surviving, and also, talking about like these food combinations that do support us, right? I know that that's a large topic, right? So I mean, we can hear that, and that's a broad topic. So like, what are the details? And we've talked about it in some of the past episodes, and we'll continue talking about it. But I just wanted to give just ask the question, if you could, in 5-7 minutes, just talk a little bit about like fats, oils, vegetables, protein, you know, um, just that 5+5 concept. Um, and the main reason why is because I know that a lot of people just think, like you said, food, you just eat it because you have to. And it kind of doesn't matter what you're putting in as long as you're full and you don't pass out. And it's like, no, actually, depending on the different times of the day and your unique experience where you're at, you know, not having good fats in your body's crucial. I didn't realize that, I didn't fully realize it. I knew cod oil, fish oil, something was good for you, but I didn't know like the necessities and how many functions, and to be cooking with fats all the time, in good quality and small portions, was a good thing, at least for me. So I know that was my unique
Mhm.
experience. So I was just curious if you could just touch on the variety and the combining and the necessity.
Okay. Um, so, well, yeah, I mean, there's a huge plethora of nutrients, and nutrition that we need, like I said, in order to be able to not just survive but to thrive as well too. And so, this is where the balance comes in, right? A lot of people eliminate certain food groups from their diet and from their habits and their lifestyle and their practices. And that's where we really can run into issues, especially long term. Like I said, in a moment that might be really beneficial, but we have to look at the long term. Like, when does that stop becoming beneficial and when does it become detrimental? And so, if you are eliminating any of, the food groups from your regular habits, then I encourage you to look at, how you can incorporate all of these pieces back in there, but in a way that supports, you per se. And so I see, even in this day and age, like, it's all over the mainstream that we need good healthy fats, for example. Like, this is what you brought up, but a lot of people don't understand what that means and what that looks like within their daily food intake. And again, it's different for everybody. Our ancestry comes into play on that, where we live in the planet currently. um, all these different things come into play as to how much of these things that we need. But the bottom line is we should have them all there. We don't want to be eliminating any of them, and two that pop out for the biggest are fats and carbs. A lot of people have, completely eliminated carbs, from their diet and whatnot. But again, they're important. We need the fats, we need the protein, we need the carbohydrates. We need all of the amino acids, we need the minerals, like, we need all of these things, right? And so the uniqueness is in finding the right combination of those things to support yourself in any given moment. Because here's the thing, we're not static beings, we're changing all the time. And so the way we feed and support ourselves should also be a reflection of that, and working from a primary foundation. And so that's kind of, what I teach, and what Jose has been referring to here with the 5+5. And so this 5+5 is an equation that came through from my teacher and mentor's teacher and mentor. So this is kind of a third generation legacy that I am passing on here. And I have also, shall we say, expanded upon it. I dug deeper, and I found out some of the more original components within this 5+5 that weren't necessarily, being touted as a part of it in order to meet society's needs at the time when it was all really being brought out into the world. And so the pieces and the elements that I've kind of brought back into it are pieces that were traditionally a part of it as well too. And so this is why I call it the 5+5 live vibrantly way of living and eating and approaching, food and life, really. And so what that is we are not eliminating any of the food groups within this combination here. But what we are doing is we are combining certain food groups in a way that really support each other. And so one of the key components within this way of eating is to not put really heavy, dense, sugary starches, per se, together at the same time with a protein within the meal. And again, that is in order to be able to lighten up that load on your body a little bit, so that your body is not spending so much time trying to digest and break down and get all the nutrients out of your food. But by combining your food this way, and always having a bit of healthy fat in it, no matter, what you're eating, and remembering that the plant-based part of your food is the larger portion. And then animal foods have a role in our diet and in a way of keeping us healthy and providing this nutrition for us. But there's a way of doing that, and bringing them into your practices and habits that actually can support you at a much higher level, and then also support these animals and our planet as well too. And so, again, being able to put all of these things together in a specific way, and then, eating our bigger meals and our more protein-based meals earlier in the day really support the functionality of our body as it goes through all its processes throughout the day. And how we start the day plays a huge role in how we're going to feel, like, especially between that 2 and 4 o'clock period, in the afternoon, where a lot of people just kind of like, and like, that's it, they're done. And then, they get their second wind, which is really, our adrenal energy starting to kick in, and rescuing us, as opposed to, because, it's going into that stress mode there, as opposed to actually drawing from reserves in our body to provide specific energy. And so that's kind of the difference that we are looking at there. And, something as simple as I just taught a class a couple of Fridays ago to a group of local seniors about microgreens. Oh my God, it was so much fun. And they were a blast to speak to and to talk to. And they got so excited about what I was sharing with them because it was something so simple. And it's interesting that within that age group too, a lot of them were like, oh, I used to do my own sprouts and microgreens like way back when. And then it's like, what happened? I'm not doing it anymore. And so a lot of them were really excited to go back to those practices. And we're like, thank you so much for bringing that back, in on my radar again. And the reason they were so excited about this is because this is the one thing I always say to everybody. If you do nothing else in your life, but add sprouts and microgreens to every meal, like, a good, like, small palm size handful, like a blend of sprouts, a blend of microgreens. And of course, looking at the quality of your food and where it comes from plays a huge role in this as well too. But even within that, if you can just add that little bit of sprout or microgreen, you are upping your nutrition from like here to here just by doing that one thing. And the reason for that is because there is so much life within that specific food. And I always teach life equals life. We are only as alive as the life in the food that we eat. If we're eating dead so-called food, then how can we expect to stay alive and to thrive? But if we're eating food that is just bursting with life, then that's going to be our experience as well too. And so microgreens and sprouts have all of that built into it, because if you think about it, these sprouts and these microgreens are basically the little tiny baby shoot from the seed after it's been activated and starts to grow into whatever it would be if it was growing into maturity. And when you harvest it in this, baby state, you are harvesting all of the nutrients in that state, and you are ingesting that because it didn't get used up to grow the mature plant, which we get a whole other subset of nutrients from as well too. So it's not like one is better than the other, but this act of just adding these sprouts and microgreens can do so much for us. It's like taking a digestive enzyme with every meal. It helps us to be able to have the enzymes that we need. And especially as we age, often you see with seniors, enzymes is a big issue in their digestion. And so being able to do something like add sprouts and microgreens in to help digest your food, it's like, oh my goodness, like how much easier does that get? And inexpensive, really. I mean, they are more expensive than they used to be, but still, ultimately, if you look at the big picture of things, it's way cheaper than being sick, and it's way cheaper than buying a supplement. And they're usually available locally as well too, or you can opt to do your own very simply also. And so these sprouts and microgreens, not only do they have this, super nutrition, like taking a mega multivitamin right there, like it's like eating a digestive enzyme right there. So that's two things. And then on top of that, they're considered a microprotein. And so we have all that profile and that plethora of amino acids that are beginning to formulate and that we need within our bodies as well too, available within that. And that's going to help us to be able to break down and assimilate the other proteins in our meal as well too. And so that's kind of like the key piece of making sure, even within the protein realm, do we have raw proteins and microproteins as well as cooked protein? And so there's just some really basic fundamental principles that we can learn and apply to any situation in life in any given moment. You don't always have the most optimal choice of food in front of you. That's not how life goes these days anymore. Sometimes we find ourselves in a situation, even if we've tried to prepare to the best of our ability, where we're just like, oh my God, those are my choices. Okay, so which one is going to support me within this realm at the highest level? If that is your choice. And if you decide to not care about it in the moment and just go ahead with whatever, then great. Make that choice. Let it go. Don't sit there and beat yourself up for it. Don't shame yourself. Don't judge yourself. You made a choice. Enjoy it. Move on. So I hope that answers your question. I'm going to end right there.
Yeah, well, we'll continue on. I want to get more specific and just really, get it into my head with some of the things I still have questions about, and for anyone else, as far as, the more the nitty gritty and, stuff that can kind of be um, is sort of umbrella for everyone. And then, of course, the unique differences. For example, I don't know if the different having 4 or 5 different kinds of cold oils, like the sunflower and the pumpkin and all of that, is that good for everyone across the board, or was that just good for me in particular? Are there certain people that maybe shouldn't? um, so like I have some of these questions that I think not this time, but maybe another time, to just more and more kind of provide that information, you know
Yeah, no, we can definitely dive deeper into that. And I just want to, like you just mentioned, like oils. But I think what you're referring to is when we were really diving deep into the fat cycling to support hormone balance, correct?
Mhm. Well, I
Or
was,
just
but
in
also,
general?
well, yes, there was that aspect that we were doing, but also, um, like there was the one person that we were working with that um, just needed oils in their life, like they
Yeah.
weren't even so, so then it's like, okay, if we have 4 or 5 different oils in the house, we can just make dressings out of that, just to put that lubrication and that support that wasn't necessarily the hormone cycling.
Right. Okay. Got it. And then, I mean, fats is like a huge discussion, in and of itself as well, too, because, again, um, as a modern society, we have tended to abuse a lot of, these things. And, you know, what we're coming to realize now too is, well, I've never really recommended a lot of the, the seed oils, like well, canola oil isn't even a real oil. That's just it's rapeseed. So we're not even going to go there. But, even like sunflower oil is not a healthy oil, and it's not one, and neither is safflower oil, and a lot of these vegetable and corn oils and all of these things as well, too. So it's really important to know which are the oils and fats that you want to be including. So since I'm going down that road, why don't we make that the topic for next week,
Okay.
and we will talk about healthy fats.
Okay, yeah, that sounds perfect. I just want to end today. My little thing I want to say is that it's been really fun introducing sprouts and microgreens and vegetables to some folks in my world that weren't doing them before. And it was like a push, a fight, a battle, stuffing it down their throat, And now they are begging for sprouts, wondering where their jar of sprouts is, always asking for a salad.
Yeah.
And I would say that that's the biome talking, that is the
Yeah.
bacteria in there saying, feed me more.
Yeah.
And so it's been
And
really
then,
it's been
sorry, I
really
was just going
fun
to say
to
that.
witness.
Sorry about that. I didn't mean to cut you off.
It's okay.
Yeah, no, you're right. And then that's where, I just wanted to say too, like once your body starts to get those nutrients that it really needs in order to be able to do all of its functions, then
Yeah.
it's like, give me more, please. I need more of this, especially when we have been in a deficit, right? And we haven't had those reserves.
Yeah.
So, oftentimes, this is where when we start to make those changes, we find that we're just like, oh my God, I can't get enough of this particular, green or this particular vegetable or this particular thing. And it's our bodies like recognizing that we are giving it what it needs and really wanting to build up those reserves again so that it can serve you at a much higher level as well too. So
Yeah, and you can talk to someone till they're blue in the face about it. We've all experienced it on both sides, and it's just too fun when it's no longer the personality, but it's the body speaking. It's the biome speaking,
yeah,
saying, "That's what we were missing. Give me more."
yeah. And
So,
I just want to add a quick note too that what I've seen a lot is with children as well too. A lot of older kids are, not necessarily so inclined to be eating a lot of vegetables or greens and different things. And sometimes just buying like a store-bought microgreen or a sprout and adding that in, unless you like sneak it in there in different ways, which there's a multiple ways of doing that as well too. But it's not necessarily something that most children are, and this is very general because I've seen a lot of kids who just dive into like a plate of microgreens and stuff their face as well too. So, but in general, I don't see that very often, let's say. And but this is where doing your own sprouts and the microgreens in the home and involving your kids into that process as well too. They get so excited being able to watch this seed that was like just a seed come up with that tiny little sprout, or come up just above the soil and then start to grow into that, little bit of life. And that gets them involved and that gets them excited about the process. And then they're excited to enjoy that food as well too. So just wanted to add that note in there.
Yeah, it's a great note. And it really just circles back around to the balancing of the systems, because just that action itself is so balancing in a action oriented and connection sort of way. So
Exactly.
I love that.
Exactly.
Well, next week, then we're going to dive into healthy fats and some of that. That sounds exciting. And um, balance is always such a great topic. So I'm glad that it, you know, came to your awareness today. And thank you. And as always, anyone who has any questions later, give us a shout out on social media, however you want.
Yep.
Like, comment, subscribe, all the things that make us grow bigger and get the
Share
word
with your friends.
out. And thank you so much. Any last words, Joanna?
No, I think I'll just end there before I end off on another tangent. So,
Okay, well, we love your tangents, but we'll just wait for next week.
okay,
So until then, thank you so much, and I hope you all have a great day.
bye, everybody.